Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico, and welcome back to another Thursday evening broadcast of the program, and thanks for joining us. Hard to believe, but we're almost at the end of January here, the 29th tonight, just a couple more days, and we'll be into the next month of 2015. Hard to believe that we're moving along that fast, but I guess that's what happens when you get a little bit older. Thanks for joining into the program tonight. I got a couple of great guests. Kelly Murray is going to be joining me here in just a few moments. Great professional golfer, a teacher, and of course entertainer. You might remember him from Big Break, and we'll talk a little bit about that when he comes on the program here in a few minutes. And later in the broadcast, going to be joined by another gentleman, another PGA teacher professional, number one best-selling author, and the inventor of Mind Technique Synergy, and also USA Junior Golf Team coach, Mr. Gary Occhino. He's going to be joining me here a little bit later in the broadcast. But thanks for tuning in. And don't forget, for those of you that are tuning into the live broadcast, we are live every Thursday night from 6 to 8 p.m. Central Time. Best way and quickest way to find us is go to blogtalkradio.com, type /Golf Talk Live, or you can go up into the search key and just type in Golf Talk Live. That'll get you to the home page as well. And if you miss the live broadcast, all you do is just go down in that same page, scroll down a little bit further to the on-demand section, and any of the broadcasts that you might have missed during a live performance, you can listen to at your leisure with the recorded versions. And they're all there in order from the most recent to the oldest as you scroll down. Anytime during the program, don't forget, if you want to speak to either myself or the guests, if you want to call in during the live broadcast on Thursdays, you can do so by calling at area code 646-716-4667. That's 646-716-4667. Or you can email questions or comments about the program to me personally at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. Or if you're in the golf industry and you're interested in coming on the program, you can also email me there at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. If you're somebody that's on social media and you want to find out what's going on in the program, find out who's coming up, visit facebook.com/Golf Talk Live blog. That's the homepage on Facebook for the program, and I post every week who my guests are going to be, so you can see it there. And you're welcome to post some comments if you want, and also while you're there, appreciate if you'd like the page and pass it around and get some of your other fellow golf enthusiasts to like it as well. You can also follow me on Twitter at Ted and Buck CEO. That's Ted and Buck CEO, CEO being in capital letters. And appreciate all the recent followers. I get more and more every week as the weeks go on. I appreciate everybody for following me on Twitter as well. And also the show is updated there on a weekly basis. Still doing some work on the website, but you can visit the website at www.golftalkliveblog.com. That gives you pretty much the format and everything going on and some of the people that have been on the program. Some great books on there, as well as some few of the products that have been featured on the show as well. You can find them there at golftalkliveblog.com. So don't forget to visit the website when you get a chance. A lot of great things happening, obviously, in the golf industry, and I always look forward to bringing you some of the latest things happening here on the program. And as I said, got two great guests tonight. Kelly Murray and Gary Occhino going to be joining us a little bit later in the program. But just a quick note to remind everybody that on March the 5th, we'll be bringing back Coach's Corner. You've heard me talk about that many times. And that'll be starting on March the 5th. That'll be taking up the first hour of the program. And, of course, the second hour will continue on with some great interviews of different guests. But the first hour from 6 to 7 Central is going to be the Coach's Corner panel. I'll have a panel discussion. Everybody's been joining in on the panel list, so I've got a good list of great teachers and coaches again this year, some returning favorites and a few new ones along the way as well. So it'll be a lot of fun, get some different perspectives. If you're interested in that as well, there's still some time. There's still a few dates available for the rest of the year. If you want to email me at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com, just indicate that you're interested in participating in the Coach's Corner segment. If you're a teacher professional or a coach or somebody that helps students out there and you think you've got something to share with the panel discussion, by all means, you're welcome to throw your hat in the ring. I certainly appreciate it. And also, starting next Tuesday, the Women of Golf, Cindy Miller and I, LPGA professional and Legends Tour player Cindy Miller, and I will be coming back to the airwaves on Tuesday mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's this coming Tuesday, which I believe is February 3rd. If I'm not mistaken, it might be the 2nd. I'll have to double check on that. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but it's next Tuesday anyways, this coming Tuesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, and it's an hour-long show, and Cindy and I have got some great guests that we're lining up for this year as well. And looking forward to tackling the ladies in the golf profession and talking to a few of them and getting some of their thoughts and inputs about the industry and some of the things that they're doing to help some of you out there get a little bit better in your game. So I appreciate you for tuning in that program as well. And as I said, that'll be next Tuesday. I don't have the date in front of me. I apologize. But that'll be at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Blog Talk Radio, and that's the Women of Golf show with LBJ professional Cindy Miller. So make sure that you join in for that. I see that Kelly is ready to go here. So let me just do a quick introduction of Kelly, and I'll bring him on the show here. Kelly, as I mentioned, is a golf professional. He's had over 34 years of experience competing and performing. And in the last 34 years, he's traveled to more than 25 countries, competed in over 100 national opens. He's won 3 international opens and entertained thousands of golfers. In 1990, he set a Guinness World record by hitting a golf ball 684.8 yards, you heard me right, with a wooden driver. So we're going to talk to him a little bit about that in later in our discussions. And he's also been featured on TV a number of times. Of course, he was on, as I mentioned, one of the big breaks on the Golf Channel, and has written numerous pieces for golf magazines, and currently up in Virginia with his wife and son and performing a number of different golf events and giving, of course, some private lessons. So without any further hesitation, let me bring on Mr. Kelly Murray. Kelly, welcome to Golf Talk Live.
Who am I speaking to?
This is Ted. How are you doing?
You can hear me okay, Ted?
I can hear you just fine.
I'm speaking to your audience, too, and I'm a little concerned because my wife gave me some headphones into my Galaxy 5 phone, and it's pretty high-tech stuff I'm on, and I'm hoping you can hear me. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yeah, I can hear you just perfect. That's just absolutely perfect.
I can hear you perfect. I'm walking around the parking lot in Boca Raton, Florida, parking lot of Whole Foods. It's a beautiful restaurant, but also a shopping center for food. And I must say, I had my alarm set for 7:05 to call you guys. And I was hoping, I have no idea if Cindy Miller's also on the call or not, or if she's around.
No.
No.
No, not tonight.
We were on Big Break 7 together, and I was going to say hey to her and hadn't talked to her in a while.
Yeah, she's a fantastic lady. No, she's going to be joining me next Tuesday on a show that we do together, her and I, called The Women of Golf, which
right.
is...
I'm well aware of that show, and I was hoping that for some reason she was going to be on tonight so I could just catch up for a minute. But please pass my regards on to Cindy, a wonderful lady, and her husband, Alan. And I know that I talked to a Canadian golf professional friend of mine who is working for a company called Body Track, which is a sensor device that you hit balls from. And we were working the last 2 days. They said, yeah, and Cindy Miller, I think she was on the Big Break with you. She just bought one of my mats today. I went, no way, Cindy, I'll be talking to her tomorrow night, I said. So I lied.
She's a great lady. and I'm going to get you to talk a little bit more about that and your experience on Big Break with her.
Good.
But Kelly, let's just first off, what I like to do with somebody that's new on the program with me and my audience, obviously I know a lot of people know you from Big Break, but why don't you just tell everybody a little bit how you got into golf, what sort of set the bug, if you will, on fire for you, get you in the golf industry?
Well, Ted, I grew up on the west coast of Canada, in Vancouver, Canada, and I was born back in the 1950s, 1956, so I'm an old guy now. And matter of fact, the reason I'm in Boca Raton is I'm trying out this week for the Champions Tour event that's making the Florida Swing and the Allianz tournament. However, today was the pre-qualifier, and I had a couple of three putts in the first two holes. And on the fourth hole, my boy said to me, "Dad, that's your fourth three putt." And I said, "Well, I feel like a little kid driving a school bus. I don't play much competition anymore." He said, "But you're striking the ball well. You three-putted for a par, and, And I said, son," he said, "matter of fact, Dad," he cut me off. He said, "if Mom was putting for you, you'd be even par. If I was putting for you, you'd be even or one over maybe. But you're two over. You've got to turn it around. We make some birdies." Well, I needed to make about 4 birdies coming in my last 4, and I actually made 2 bogeys and shot 77. But I tell you, golf, no matter whether you're just learning or you've been playing at age 58 like I am and trying to compete once again, a little bit more so than I have in the last few years. I've been raising my boy and teaching golf more than playing, and I have played all over the world. But when I first started, I was 10 years old caddying at a golf course in Vancouver called Shaughnessy Golf Club. And Ted, I'm sure your audience is aware that they've played about 4 Canadian Opens at Shaughnessy Golf Club. And my dad was a member down the road, 5 miles down the road at Marine Drive Golf Club, and I had to get there by mountain bike, or 10-speed actually. And so I would go and caddy for my dad there, and just pull his bag around, basically sit on it, and enjoy. They had lemonade on the 6th and 16th holes, so those are my first memories: is riding on his golf bag and drinking lemonade until I got a stomach ache, typically. and then my dad would say, he'd say, "Kelly, there's the best spot to find golf balls. It's just over there on the right, because a lot of guys slice." So I realized that most people slice, so if you want to find a golf ball, go to the right side of the golf course. So now in my older age, if it's slow, I'll walk up the right side with my sandwich in one hand and my bag over my shoulder, and I'll scoop up Pro V1s all the way down the right side of the fairway, because a lot of guys buy these Pro V1s, Ted, as you know. And they slice, so I just pick them up. And so I've got a lot of golf balls. And I don't have to buy them. Yeah.
Well, I did very similar. Yeah, I did very similar when I was growing up. And as you may or may not be aware, Kelly, I'm also Canadian. And
where are you from?
Where are you from? Originally born in Hamilton, but grew up in Burlington for most of my life. And yeah, so just outside of Toronto. It was for those that are not familiar with that area that are tuning in.
The people that don't realize you're just outside of Toronto, but he's near Grimsby. You see.
Right.
And that's where the home of the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And sometimes they'll be playing against the Toronto Argonauts. Hey, that's a honk at the Whole Foods parking lot here in Boca Raton. So I'm moving away from some guy honking. However, but Ted, whether you're in Canada, West Coast or East Coast, West preferably, because that's where I grew up, and I'm kind of partial to it. I have been a member of the Canadian PGA Tour. They call it PGA Tour Canada since 1980. I've been a member in good standing since now 35 years. And one of the perks of my membership has been access to the TPC courses. Mm-hmm. I got an email from Tim Fincham 3 years ago inviting me into the new PGA family as a member of PGA Tour Canada, as a veteran member. And so I live in the Tampa Bay area, and I have a place to practice, and that's the TPC courses. And I just bumped into a fellow Canadian by the name of Rod Spittle, who's playing the Champions Tour, and he practices out there and lives also in the Tampa area. But your original question was how to get into golf. And I'll tell you in a nutshell, I found out that the guys I would caddy for, I always thought in my mind I can do better than what they're doing. And these guys would shoot, 75 to 95, and typically closer to 100 than 75. And sure enough, it kind of drove me to want to, kind of prove that I could, maybe hit better than these guys. And I always thought, well, maybe I'll be invited to play as a member guest one day with these guys. And I was just young, 10, 11. And after age 16, 6 years of caddying there, I realized that, I want to turn pro one day, because I played in a pro-am as about an 18-year-old.
Right.
And eventually, I made it as a golf pro. And here I am 35 years later, and I must tell you that you never stop learning in this game. And even if you think you own the game, which I thought I did at one time in my life, because I ended up shooting a 60 at one time. I have the Canadian Tour record score for 16 years. I shot a 60, and it got broken, as all records will. But previous to me was 25 years. Mo Norman had the record of a 61. And when I shot 60 and broke his record, Mo got mad at me, and he was my mentor, and he said, "Ooh, broke the record dearest to my heart. I've taught you everything I know, and you never paid me a dime." So told Mo, he said, "One day I'm going to be an old man in my rocking chair. Nobody's going to remember me anymore." And I said, "Well, Mo, when I broke your record, I told all the media that I owe it all to Mo. He taught me everything I know." And he goes, "Well, I know. You sure? Sure, you should be telling me. You broke my record." And then, Ted, I guess of all the things I've done in my golf career, that particular day when I shot 60, it was brought to my attention by Mo Norman himself, who for 25 years was my mentor. He said to me, he says, Kelly, he said, that round of golf that you had, the 60, he said, they did a big write-up in the magazine. Did you read it? And I said, no, I haven't. He goes, ooh, go read it. And I said, why, Mo? And he goes, well, because he shot the lowest round in the history of the game of golf with the most putts. He shot a 60 with 30 shots and 30 putts. The best I ever heard before that was Royal Birkdale, 1931, I think he said, 1934. Royal Birkdale, Bobby Jones, he shot 64, 34 shots and 30 putts. The lowest score I'd ever heard was 34 shots and 30 putts until you shot 30 shots and 30 putts. If you had 25 putts, you'd shot 55, they'd still be talking about it.
Yeah.
He says, you could only putt if you could only putt. And I thought, if I could only putt, I said, I putted good. He goes, well, you had 30 shots. He says, the only way anybody can ever break that record is if they do it in 29 shots and 30 putts. He says, they'll never do that because it's par for the course is usually 36 shots. And you drove 3 par 4s and hit the par 5s and 2, but you didn't putt well. So, and then he said, they referred, this is Mo Norman, you got to understand, the audience has to understand that Mo was an autistic savant, but he was a high-functioning one, and he really understood numerals and numbers, and got straight A's in math. He got F's in all his English class and his science, and anything outside of mathematics, he got F's. And he said it didn't interest him. But anything about angles, like he worked in a bowling alley, and he could set pins like the wind, and he could see guys bowling. He could see how they moved and how they got low center of gravity and how they got down almost to their knees when they were bowling. And he put that into his golf swing, and he had his arm go straight down the fairway just like guys went down the bowling alley. And he took Sam Snead's swing and he cleaned it up to the fewest moving parts and got the most direct strike in the game, the straightest ball hitter of all time. And he was good at numbers. So when he talked to me about this 60 with 30 putts, he said, "Ooh, this is with Chip Beck and Al Geiberger. He had 21 and 22 putts. That's 21.5 putts average to shoot 59." Yep. And you had 30. Holy smokes, don't ever break your record. You're going to go to your grave with the lowest score ever shot by man with the most putts. Oh, man.
Yep.
And so anyways, these are the sort of stories I have. And I think that was one of my fond memories of not only of Mo, but of scoring golf. And I think if I had to say anything to your viewership or your listening ship, as you would call it, I would say that you never stop learning. And just when you think you might own the game, it eats you alive, like today. Here I am trying to qualify to get in the Champions Tour and maybe make a nice little nest egg, in my older age, at age 58. But I couldn't even crack the lineup in the pre-qualifier. My goodness. And then to get through that to get into the qualifier on Monday. And then out of that qualifier Monday will be just a few that I get to play for, out of 78 spots for first prize of $360,000, which is very nice. And if I had made it through the pile on Thursday and then into the pile on Monday and then made it through that pile to get to play into the tournament, which is Friday, Saturday, Sunday next week, I would have to make all 3 rounds because there's no cut. So they would pay, everybody gets a paycheck. But if you finish second to 78, it's at the back of the pile again. But if you finish first, they have to give you a 1-year exemption, which is the golden parachute for a year where you get to play in all sorts of things. So
right, exactly.
It's a treadmill that is the high wire act with, it'd be like going between the Empire State Building and another tall building with the wind blowing. and everybody's trying to pull you off the rope. It's not easy. So the golf's tough, and I've enjoyed golf because I think I was a golfer that had a show. I was an entertainer. I always had big galleries. You know, I won national driving championships all over the world. I won 104 different driving contests professionally. And, you know, like the Australian Masters 3 years in a row and the Australian Open 3 years in a row, I won the long drives. The New Zealand Open championship long drive in the front of guys like Bobby Charles and Kel Nager and Peter Thompson and all these old names. But I did all this back in the early 80s. And then when I got to Canada, I played in the Canadian Opens. I played in 4 of them and always led the driving staff. As a matter of fact, there's a young Canadian by the name of David Hearn, and David was my caddy at the Canadian Open when he was 13 or 14. So, you know, now that kid's making millions of dollars out on the PGA Tour, and he's playing today with my best friend on the tour, Eric Compton, who's had 2 heart transplants. And Eric's background, of course, #1 junior, Walker Cup player, Canadian Order Merit winner up in Canada, and then he won a spot in the Canadian Open, had me caddy for him. And then Eric finished second last year in the U.S. Open, and this week he's playing in Arizona at the Phoenix Open, and he's playing with David Hearn. So I said to Eric's caddy in a iMessage about an hour ago, I said, "Oh, you guys are just finishing up your round, and when you get in, if David's around, say, hey, from your old boss at the Canadian Open." So he said, David, he messaged back, he said, "David's right here, I just told me," and he went, LOL, he was laughing so loud. He said, "Yep, absolutely, Kelly," and we go way back. So I had a lot of stories, and Ted, I don't want to take all your radio time, but you did ask me how I started in golf, and it was caddying. And it came from motivation was, I think I can do better than these other guys. So,
yeah, and that's so true. Yeah, that's so true. You know, and let me just sort of fill the audience in just a little bit. For those of you that have never actually heard Mo Norman, that was an incredible likeness, an impersonation that you just did of Mo Norman, because I've actually met Mo. I've met Mo Norman a few times. I actually knew him through another gentleman that you're probably familiar with, Nick Westlock.
Nick the Wedge.
Yeah.
Ooh, sure.
And I'll share with you sometime a story about that off air. I don't want to get into it on air, but Nick was a really great guy. And actually, how I met Mo myself was on the range up at Carlisle Golf and Country Club, just outside of the city of Burlington. And I was working on my game a little bit with Nick, and he was sitting in the golf cart there. And of course, Mo and he go way back. And you know, Mo, yeah, exactly. And Mo came up and, you know, always was interested in what everybody else was kind of doing, and he just said, you know, basically what's the young man working on, and Nick said to him, he said, Mo, he said, he's having a little trouble here. He said, I want you to take a look at his game here, and then he said, I want you to hit a few shots and just show him how it's done. And he pulled out his 7-iron. And I think rifled off about 7 or 8 shots, and every one of them was just in like a 3-foot pattern. And and then he got his driver out and basically did the same thing within probably about a 4 or 5 foot pattern as well. And it was just one after another. And it just, he says, not. And I said to him, I said, you know, Mo, what am I doing wrong? And he says, you're not doing that. And you know, he was obviously a pretty humble guy in respect.
Well, you know, he was a pretty cheeky guy because. You know, for instance, if someone came up to him, and Mo, you know, he didn't take kindly to strangers walking up to him, but if they did, and they weren't introduced through Nick the Wedge Westlock, as you were, right. But if they did come up to him and say, hey, Mo, can you watch my swing, or can you do this or that, he'd go, who are you? Get away, you know, and he would shy away because he was scared of people. He loved kids.
Right. Yeah, he
thought kids were innocent, but he thought adults were up to something because, for instance, a guy got him to sign an autograph one time, and then that guy was from Edmonton, and next thing you know, he started out the Mo Norman golf ball business and built a contract around Mo's signature, and Mo all of a sudden one day, someone came up to him and he said, hey, I got one of your golf balls, and Mo said, ooh, I haven't lost one. He goes, no, I got one with your name on it. What? And he showed him, and Mo goes, where'd you get that? And he goes, oh, they're selling them now in you know, Canadian Tire or whatever. He goes, what?
Yeah.
And so Mo had to talk to a lawyer friend of his, and next thing you know, they stopped the thing because, you know, Mo didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff like that. I remember Nick used to tell me about that. All right, Kelly, let me ask you. I've obviously got some questions here I want to get in here.
Please.
You've played obviously in over 25 countries and various events. What are some of your more memorable events? And would you say, as you put it in some of your notes here, that you racked up some frequent flyer miles?
Oh, I sure did. 38 airlines. So I think the start of my career was the fact that I tried out for the PGA Tour. I went to PGA Tour school 16 times. And then the 17th time, I broke Mac O'Grady's record, and the PGA Tour office let me know when I called, because the secretary said they had a bet that I was going to break the record. And that was when I was on about 14. They said, Kelly's persistent. He keeps going every year. And then when I called up I said, after 16 tries, I said I moved from New York to Virginia, and I called up the office and said, I've got a new mailing address. And back then, they used to mail out. You couldn't do things online. And they said, what's your new address? And then the girl goes, hey, I'm going to win the bet if you send in your entry. I go, what bet? She goes, that you're going to break Mac O'Grady's record for most tryouts of any man alive for the U.S. Tour. I said, well, what was the record? They 16, you're tied with him right now. And I said, well, what? You try one more time, 17th time. So if you think of that, that's a lot of persistence. I missed my European Tour card, for instance, in 1981 and 1991 by one stroke in 81 and one stroke in 91. I never got a place to play. In 1981, I would have been playing with Ballesteros,
right,
Bernard Langer, Greg Norman. It was a little bit before Colin Montgomery. Nick Faldo would have been out there. But being first alternate, I thought, well, I'll just stay in Vancouver and play the Canadian Tour again. I can't go all the way to Europe and sit on the bench. But what I didn't realize, I would have gotten to almost every tournament if I'd just gone. But I didn't know. I was a rookie. So I think the thing that gets in my craw the most is that because I didn't get my U.S. card, I had to go overseas in places. So I played the Asian Tour. And I went to school prior to turning pro. I went after college in Vancouver and playing ice hockey and everything and rugby and all the things I did in Vancouver. Well, I got down to college in California at San Jose State University, and they were NCAA, and they were ranked number 5 in the nation the year I was playing there, in my last year as a senior. And I made the team, and we got to travel, and I got to go all over. I went to Fresno and San Diego and Arizona and Houston and great places with the team. And Mark Levy was on the team, and Mark Levy has recently won the British Senior Open, I think it was, and then he won. Anyways, he's won a bunch of tournaments in the U.S. Tour, but he was really good buddies back in 1981 with Payne Stewart. So Payne and Mark and I were all playing a mini tour in San Diego along with Jimmy Rutledge and a few other Canadian boys. And so it was the same time at Jack Murphy Stadium, the San Diego Chargers Stadium, there was the Super Bowl. So it was around January, this time of year. And I was with the guys, and we were playing, and we tried to go. Mark Ruby was my teammate from San Jose, and he said, hey, Kel, we're going to go try to watch the game today. I go, where is it? He goes, it's in San Diego here. And he had his buddy Payne with him. I didn't know him from a hole in the ground, except he wore blue jeans, had earrings, and he could really hit a golf ball. I mean, I watched him practice the guy had a smooth, silky swing. This was before the +4 days. So we went to the stadium. We're staying outside the stadium. The scalpers won $100 a ticket for the nosebleed seats at Jack Murphy Stadium. And there wasn't much. And between the three of us, we only had about $60 on us. There's no way we're going to get in the game, dreaming at $20 a ticket, and then that would leave us no food money or anything. So we're all starving, young, aspiring pros. And so when it was $100, we were just no way. We couldn't get into the game. So Mark Levy said, plan B. He said, look across the parking lot diagonally over that direction from the stadium, look away and see that building there. That's the Joe's Crab Biscuit Shop or something, and it's a bar and whatever. And he said, they got $5 pitchers and 5-cent wings. And we said, plan B. So we went over there. I think it was $3 pitchers back in 1981. However, plan B. So we went there. On our third pitcher of beer, around the third quarter, we're watching the football game. We can see the arena. We're at the outdoor patio. We can hear the roar at the arena. And then about 5 seconds later, on TV, you see the roar. So we already knew if they scored or didn't score. So we were sitting there, and about the third pitcher of beer in the third quarter, Payne Stewart looked at Weeby and he said, I've been studying this Golf World magazine. He said, Weebs, you got to come over to Asia with me, man. He says, these guys are playing 30,000 first prize every week. 30,000. Look at this, and the scores they were shooting, they're shooting like 73, 73, 73, 70. Like -1, and they're picking up $30,000 first prize. And they start in the Philippines, and then they go to Hong Kong, Then they go over to Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, Thailand, and all these places. And he says, you got to go. And Reeves goes, I'm not eating Chinese food for 2.5 months, 10 weeks. No way. He says, take Murr. So Payne looked me right in the eye and goes, you want to go? And I said, I'm in. When do we leave? He says, tomorrow. And I went, what? He says, yeah. He says, there's a flight out of L.A. And I go, no way. So I drove all the way back to Canada, got my girlfriend, got her to get a passport, and drove all the way back down. It actually wasn't tomorrow. It was actually in about 4 days. But he said tomorrow, meaning like right now, let's go.
Yeah.
I think it was the beer talking, but it was Payne being funny. Tomorrow. And I'm like, I'm in. So it was like, I decided that quickly. That's how independent and fast on the feet I was. I'm in. And we was laughing. I went there 10 years, and my wife is Australian-born Japanese, and I've never had more fun in my life. I had a sponsorship by Honma Golf Equipment Company, which is like the Mercedes, the Lamborghinis of Japan, the best possible darn equipment you can get. They've got gold sort of back of the irons, and they've got $2,000 shafts in their drivers. And they sponsored me for 18 years. It was wonderful. And boy,
wow.
Those golf clubs, I won 104 long drive contests using their clubs. And they promoted me all over Japan at posters, and it was unbelievable. And I think Payne Stewart, that year, I know, he won India and Indonesia, the two worst events of the Asian Tour. Sometimes, I don't know if you beat this or not, but they call them the arseholes of the tour because the cities were rotten and the people were scroungy and, get off the plane and
right.
one-legged people would jump up to you and try to beg money from you. And it was unbelievable. And I said, on that particular flight into India, when we came down at 4:30 in the morning, when we came down to the tarmac, one of the wings hit and the pilot kind of went up about 20 feet and then came back down to a stop. And we got out, and Payne got down and kissed the ground. He goes, my God, that was a flight. That was a flight. And, from that point forward, we were really good buddies. We probably only see each other once every 2 years or so, or maybe every year if I got the Canadian Open. We went our own ways. But he made it big, and I tell you, he was a hell of a guy.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, when we were in India, he had an application form for the U.S. Tour. And I went by his hotel room that night, and I said, hey, I'm going to go for Indian food. Go figure, I'm in India. And he said, no, I ain't eating Indian food. I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm just filling out my application for the U.S. Tour, baby. I go, what? And I looked at it and said, William Payne Stewart. And I'm looking at it, he's got all filmed out, he's got all his address, St. Louis, and all these things down Missouri, whatever it was. And it's beautiful penmanship, not a typo, just brilliant. And I said, where can I get one? He says, I think you got to call John Bender, the tour leader. He had some. So I called Johnny. He goes, I just ran out about an hour ago. He said, get a hold of somebody and photocopy it. I said, photocopy it in India? Really? Where? Like under the goat? And Payne's laughing at me. He goes, Murr, he said, we can get some whiteout. We'll white out mine. We'll photocopy it, and then I'll fill it back out again. We'll mail it together. We'll save a stamp. And I go, okay. Well, he won that week, so he didn't have to worry about stamps after that. But I filled out. We both got back to the United States and Canada, respectively, and I had a rejection letter. Must be no facsimiles. Must be an original application. And he got accepted. Got his card and never looked back. And I had to sit out. Oh man, and my game was sharp too. I just came off the Asian Tour. I was ready to play. So
it's interesting because Payne was always it's sad. Unfortunately, he's not with us any longer. But he was such a great not only a great player but just a great gentleman of the game. And always enjoyed watching him.
He was a prankster.
Oh yeah,
he's the most enjoyable guy to be around, and he could have been a shortstop. The guy had flypaper hands. We used to play a ball game at every pool because it was hot on this Asian Tour for Hong Kong week, typically, maybe even Japan or Korea. But typically there's at least 7 burning hot weeks, and we used to meet at the pool after practice, and we'd get the early bus out to the golf course, and by the time we played and practiced and competed, we'd be back to the hotel around 3:30, and we'd hit the pool. And there'd be the tour wives all laying around the pool and the regular business guys at the hotel and stuff, and we'd be the maniacs, Canada versus Japan. So Payne had his 2 teammates, Terry Anton and another chap, and I had Jerry Anderson and Ray Stewart and I, and we were diving off the diving board, and we had to catch this tennis ball. And one guy would have to tread water in the deep end, another guy would be in the shallow end, and the other guy would be on the diving board, and we had to make a completion where the guy from the shallow end would have to throw to the guy on the diving board. The guy on the diving board would have to be airborne when he catches it, throw it to the guy treading water. The guy treading water had to catch it and throw it back to the guy, and he had to make the completion before he went in. So if you can picture that as bunch of passes, and if you blow it, you get an out. If you complete the play, you get a run. So I'll tell you, it was hard to get Payne Stewart out because he could never miss a ball, and the guy could throw like crazy. I mean, the guy was a super athlete at whatever he wanted to do. So yes, he was a gentleman, but he was and he was a jokester, and he loved to pull pranks. You like to, change your head covers on you or stick your clubs upside down, put the head covers on the grip end. You go to take your driver out. There's the grip, and you go, where the hell's the club head? What? Just funny things like that.
Yeah, I think he and Paul Azinger and some of the others that were of that time, used to do a lot of that. Let me ask you. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up, Kelly. You mentioned earlier about hitting some long drives, and of course you hold a world record. And let me just tell the folks that aren't familiar with it just a little bit about it, and then I'll let you expand on it. Back in on the 25th of September 1990, at the Fairmont Hot Springs Resort in British Columbia, you hit a 684.8-yard drive up a 30-yard wide airstrip to set the Guinness Book World of Record for the longest drive. Unbelievable whopper of a drive. First off, let me ask you, how was that even possible? But I want you to explain to the audience a little bit about how that came about and just a little bit about the experience.
Well, records may be broken, so my management team decided that that's what we're going to do. We're going to break it. We're going to put Honma equipment that I was using, Honma. If you want to look that up, they'll see what a beautiful company they are. And I haven't been with them for about 12 years now. But Honma, we put them in the record. I'm on Hot Springs in the record book. I'll go in the record book, and my ball supplier, which is Wilson Ultra at the time, will get in the record book. So we did a little marketing thing where we would get all these guys in the record book. So we made a media day golf tournament. So we flew all the media from Western Canada up there. So it was really neat. And TSN, which is our Total Sports Network up in Canada, came along, and it was nice. And I did break it. Now, you said a 30-yard wide, but it's actually 100 feet, which is 33 and a third yards wide. And the one thing about the runway, because they don't want water staying on the runway, they have about a 3-degree gradient from the middle. There's a middle spot that's about 3 feet wide. It's flat, and then the kind of gradient's 3 degrees down each side towards the sides of the runway. And I had to hit a fade down the left side that bounced up the middle and then ran down the middle and stopped on the runway. So it had to be the first one to stop on the runway. And I hit it 684.8 yards. You did get that right. And for the Canadians, that's 6 football fields. For the Americans, it's almost 7 football fields. Because we have a 110-yard field and they have 100.
Right.
But in all honesty, it was something that a young man will do, and that's what I did. And I used to sell firewood, so I had a mighty swing on me. And I had as a hockey player, I could really hit a hockey puck hard. And I did things hard. I have a cousin, for instance, that went to college, and she was setting records at throwing javelins, and we got the same sort of bloodline. So we can throw and make things go a long way. So I was blessed with sort of a Ukrainian-Irish body, which is strong and hardy, I suppose. So I did do a lot of records, and on land, people say, well, that's a runway. Anybody can do it, but think about it. If you stood on the runway and you took the 5 fastest baseball pitchers, for instance, and said, okay, everybody's going to try to throw the longest ball down the runway. Who can get so much energy into the ball it's going to run the furthest? And someone's going to do it. I don't know who today can do these sort of things, but find people. So over the years, John Daly tried to break the record, and Laura Davies, and there's a whole whack of people that have tried to break that record, and it was fun. 684 yards. When you look down the runway, it looks like you're looking through the eye of a needle. I mean, by the time you look if you ever get to a par 5 that's 500 yards, green looks small. Picture another 184 yards past that. And then you're looking down the runway, you've got to have that thing stop on that. So it's a mind boggle because you don't think you can do it. But yet I hit 184 drives flat out, and I kind of had writer's cramp by the end of it all because I was going flat out. So it was like it was the top of the ninth, and I was bases loaded, and I was just letting it rip. And I was ripping at it. But what I did is I stayed in really good balance. And, I've been doing yoga my whole life, so my flexibility was that of a ballerina, I suppose, and I had the balance probably of a guy like on a tightrope or, I had the posture of an equestrian rider. I really took pride in getting up to a golf ball like a George Knudson, with proper posture and balance and a good weight transfer. And I learned a lot of things from Mo Norman and George Knudson up in Canada about weight transfer and arc and plane and all the good things that you need to hit a golf ball well. And I was a real student of the game, and I loved to practice. I would stay late at the range. Matter of fact, one night I'm late at the range, and Eric Compton's standing 30 yards behind me, and I see a kid standing back there, and I'm hitting drives. It's late at night, and he sees my natural golf bag. He goes, "Hey, that natural golf, that's that Mo Norman golf." He goes, "It is, isn't it?" And I go, "Yeah." He says, "That Mo Norman as straight as they say?" And I go, "Straighter than you can imagine and straighter than they say." He goes, "Really?"
Yeah.
He goes, I got a bit of a hook. What would you do to fix that? And I said, "Well, I don't know. Come on over here. I'll show you a Mo Norman drill." I said, "What's your name?" He goes, "Eric." I said, "What's your last name, Eric?" He goes, "Compton." I go, "Compton? You're the guy that's on the leaderboard every week up here." I said, "Didn't you win 2 weeks ago?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "What are you doing out here tonight spying on me?" He goes, "Well," he says, I was putting, and I heard this thwack, thwack, thwack. I said, "Well, I tip like 40 balls, and I just try to get a cardio workout." He said, "But the one ball is just 100 yards off your club, and you're connecting with the next one and the next one." And he said, "Well, so what would Mo do to fix my hook?" And I said, "Well," and I gave him my F8 swing weight driver, similar to like a crowbar with a baseball handle on it. And I stand and I say, "Get on your right leg and just put your left foot, just lift your left foot off the ground, just touch your left toe, just like 1% of your weight on your left toe, just for a balance point. Stay on your right foot and hit as high as you can. Don't go to your left foot, just stay on your right and hit as high as you can." And I put up on a ballpoint pen, and I parked one down there about 340 at the end of the range. And he goes, "Okay." And I said, "Give me your driver." I go, "Whoa, nobody hits this." I said, "Only Greg Norman, Mo Norman so far. I don't give my equipment out." He goes, No, give me a try." I go, "Okay, but don't put any roof mark on it." He goes, No. And he nailed it. I don't know, he threw it like 310 or whatever. He's 5'8", and I'm going like, "Eric Compton, you're amazing." And he goes, "So even today, I've carried probably 15 events on the PGA Tour for him. He's taken me to Europe, for instance, to the Dubai Desert Classic. We played a practice round with Rory McIlroy, and we played in the Qatar Masters, and we played over in Qatar. And he took me to Mexico, and he took me to Puerto Rico, and Arnold Palmer's Bay Hill, and the Honda, and all over the place. And I've carried from the U.S. Open Pebble Beach. I was there with him as a coach, and I've coached him probably 15 weeks on tour. But I've never seen a kid that is so gifted hand-eye coordination. He's had 2 heart transplants, but the kid can flat-out play. And when he hit that golf ball right in the middle of the club head, to this very day, whenever he gets to the hole and there's trouble left, and I'm walking in the gallery, he'll just look over at me, and he'll stand on his right leg and put his left toe on the ground and look over at me and wink and just make a little golf swing and look at me, and I'll laugh. And he'll get up on the next tee, and he'll do that shot and rip it down a narrow hole where guys are guiding 1-irons and 3-woods and rescue clubs down the fairway. And he rips one, defiant of the trouble left. And people just go, "Dude, you're saying your right leg." He goes, "Yeah, I know. I wasn't going to hook it." And they're like, "What?" And he goes, "It's a Mo Norman thing. You wouldn't understand." And off he goes. It's just so much fun. But he's talented. So,
well, and that's the thing.
Yes.
Let me ask you, Kelly, and this just so that maybe you can help some of the listeners out there. There's a lot of myths and a lot of truths about really everybody wants to hit it farther, everyone wants to hit it straighter. And I know we don't have a lot of time because I want to get to the big break and let you talk a little bit about that as well, but maybe just in a few moments, can you kind of wrap it up and let the listeners know what are some of the truths and what about some of the myths to hitting long drives?
Well, I think everybody knows you have to hold the club soft, hold it light. And I think the biggest thing is everything is an opposite in golf. Everything's an opposite. If you want to hit it hard and far, you swing slow and soft. And the slower you take the club and the softer you hold it, the deeper your turn will get and the more the angles will set. And the deeper the angles set, the more energy you store up. It's like an elastic bend. You just pull it back, you pull it back, you pull it back, and then let go. You don't have to pull it back and make it go forward. But what people do is they pull it back short and they try to force the thing forward. Yeah. And it's not it's not brute force, it's centrifugal force. The golf ball is hit through centrifugal force. Perfect case in example, and I'm sure all the people listening tonight will have seen the ladies' LPGA Tour and seen a lot of these young Korean girls that are about 5'1", 110 pounds, hitting it out there 270 yards, and they know for a fact that they're only hitting it 250 on a good day. Your listening audience. And they know who I'm talking about. There's a few guys out there that probably hit it 250, and you say you hit it 270, but you know it's 250, and that's on a good day downwind on a hard fairway. And these young gals are hitting it 270, and it might be wet conditions into the wind, but whatever. But they're using centrifugal force, not brute force. So if you want to get good, it's the Indian, not the arrows. It's not so much that you go and buy the best clubs you can afford, because you can't buy Mo Norman said you can't buy, cheat, and steal to get a good game. It's only blood, sweat, and toil. So what I have done since college, and I got an extra credit at San Jose State, one of the German kids on my team, Achim Steinfurt from Munich, Germany, talked me into going to a yoga class. And it's the best thing I ever did, because I've been doing yoga for about 43 years now, or 42 years or 41 years, whatever, since I went to San Jose State. I used to travel the world, and I looked in the yellow pages under yoga. Whether it was India or Singapore, and I would head off, and I'd go do a yoga class. I went to this Indian class in India, New Delhi, and there was an old dude in there. I tried to get Payne to go. He didn't want to go. But this old dude was teaching this Indian class. I think he was 104 years old. He was sitting like a pretzel. He was meditating. And I thought, man, if I could get in that state of mind, I think I could shoot 64 every day with my eyes closed. Just flexible, like a big old bow and arrow, just ready to just launch something. So that's the power.
You raise a valid point, and I've said this before too about the equipment. Love the equipment. It's interesting to see. If you were down at the PGA show there, a lot of great stuff. I didn't go this year either, but last year I remember some of the stuff that was there, and it's interesting in that. But I've always been a big proponent that learn how to hit the ball first and really play well before you go out and spend money on good equipment. Now, when I say good equipment, I mean you need to be properly fitted, and that's a given. But I just it blows me away when I see these guys because I obviously teach as well, and I see these guys coming on a range and they've got this fancy new driver, and they've just spent $300-400 on this, and they'll get up there and it's slice after slice, or it's hooking this or topping that.
And you know something, Ted, seriously, and the bottom line of what we're going to get here is that the guys feel bad that they spent the money, and they're going to try to get another bucket of balls and get even better at it. But their grip sucks or something, and there's certain things, like Mo Norman said, there's certain things people do they don't realize that they do well, and it's an instinct.
Right.
For instance, everybody in the viewer audience right now has a cell phone probably within an inch of their body or more than 3 feet in a plugged-in socket somewhere. But they pick up that thing and imagine it's a rock that they're going to skip down the lake. Just grab it into your throwing hand, if you're right or left, doesn't matter. Just grab your cell phone and just grab it, and then imagine there's a lake in the room that you're standing in or on your patio, and just take the cell phone. Don't throw it by any means. We're not getting you to throw it, but just grab it like you're about to throw it, and then get into, stand with your feet together, and then just make a stride like you're moving towards the lake, and then stop right at hip height, just before you were to let go of it. And what you'll realize is you're holding the thing like you would be holding a golf club if you were a professional golfer. So you just take the phone out and put the golf club where that phone is, and my God, your body knows how to move. It knows how to skip a rock. It knows how to do these things. And when I taught golf, Ted, and I'm sure you have little epiphanies and things, but I realized years ago that the grip that you're holding, the pressure you hold that stone when you skip it, the way you hold it in the web of the fingers, everything that you do, if you put a golf club there, your body understands that. And you close your eyes and you all of a sudden become a very natural golfer. And that's how I teach golf. And I think, that's a tool. And another thing Mo used to always say is if a carpenter held a hammer, he's not grabbing it and smacking it. He's holding it. He's just kind of tossing the hammerhead at the nail, and he's just holding it very lightly. But the hold, there's no twisting. He never twists the hammer. The hammer just moves beautifully back and forth. So there's a downward strike, and then if you held it out in front of you, you want to hit the wall in front of you, at hip height, you'd hold the hammer a certain way, and then if you just bend over and hit on a diagonal, somewhere between your knees and your hips, drive a nail into the wall, that would be the angle that you would hold a hammer and hit a nail, and there's no twisting. You're going to drive that nail straight into the wall. You're not going to bend the nail. So these are instinctual things that we do, and yet when it comes to golf, people are twisting the handle, and they're trying to rotate the shaft and doing all these things, and it gets them into so much trouble. And Mo always said, whoa, I've never seen so many golfers out there that just don't know what they're doing. It's bad, and sometimes they're being taught the wrong thing by their father-in-law, their sister, their brother, their greenskeeper, the pro at the club, or an uncle or somebody. that means, well, they're not trying to hurt the kids or their friends to teach them the wrong thing, but they don't know what to teach them.
Yeah.
What a world we live in! Holy smokes!
Yeah.
Why do people drove their cars like that? And they do.
Yeah, I know, and that is so much like Mo. It's not even funny.
Know.
And I suggest anybody, if you aren't familiar with Mo Norman, after the program, wait till after the show. Of course, I don't want you to miss the rest of the program.
Yes,
but
Ted,
Google it and
his name is Murray. Murray, nickname Mo Norman, and I'm Kelly Murray. And for your listeners, just so you understand who he was, when I went up and introduced myself to him, his best friend that he grew up with on tour became my tour pro, or my club pro. He was a tour pro. He took the club pro job at Marine Drive Golf Club in Vancouver, Canada. And when I went out on tour, I said, well, I don't know what to do. And he goes, oh, you're lucky that Mo and George Lynch are still playing. Go up and introduce yourself to these guys, but don't say, hi, I'm Kelly Murray. Go up and say, Albie Thompson was my coach. I'm a new rookie on the tour, and he wanted me to come and meet you. My name is Kelly Murray. So I said that to Mo. You know what Mo said? Woo! Same name as me. I'm Murray Norman, and I got a twin sister named Marie. And she married a fellow named Kelly. She's Marie Kelly, Kelly Marie, Marie Kelly, Kelly Marie. I'll never forget your name, Kelly Marie, Marie Kelly. Woo, I'll never forget your name. Woo, Kelly Marie, Marie Kelly. Woo. So that's how Mo talks. So people want to kind of look up old Murray Norman. They'll find out that he talks kind of funny. He repeats everything 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
And his golf swing repeats. But if you really want to just get into the heart of a man, you just look at his little Fireside Chat or look at the ball striking exhibition, and you will be treated to something unique, and it'll open your eyes to how simple golf can be. And Ted, thanks for suggesting that people do that, because it would be wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah, it is. Mo Norman was certainly a great guy and a great asset to the game. Kelly,
yes.
We talked briefly a little bit about Big Break. You run Big Break, of course, on the Golf Channel a few years back. Tell us a little bit about that, and then tell us about your experience, of course, with LPGA, now Legends Tour professional Cindy Miller.
Yes, well, exactly 2006, I was recruited onto the Big Break. They were looking for people 50 years of age and older on the guys' side, and girls around age 25. So it's going to be like a father-daughter type teams they were kind of come up with. So I was selected on the 50 and over team. So I had quite a pedigree, I guess, in golf over the years and all my long drives and stuff. And the Canadian fellow that was playing the Champions Tour suggested I go and try out. And I said, no, thanks, I'm just teaching. I don't compete much anymore. And he goes, no, really, you'll be perfect for it. You're an entertainer. They'll love you. They'll gobble you up. You'll be perfect. I go, no. They called me a week later and said, are you going to go down and try out? And I said, no. He said, well, look, I found out that it's going to be held in conjunction with the Sunbelt Senior Tour. I go, what's that? He goes, they play in the Atlantic coast, like in Georgia, and Florida and Virginia and so on. I went, oh, well, maybe I wouldn't mind going to play a little tournament golf for a couple of weeks. He said, yeah, well, they're going to do the Trouts in conjunction with the Jacksonville, Florida or something. And I said, okay, Savannah, Georgia was where it was. So I went down. I got there, and I was 49 and 11/12ths, and they said, next. I go, wait a minute, what? And they said, no, you have to be 50. I went, oh, man, I just paid $500 to join the Sunbelt Senior Tour and a $500 entry, and I haven't even teed off in anything yet, and they're telling me I can't even try out for this Big Break thing that I don't even want to be on. Well, when the round was over, I was so pissed off. I went around the golf course upset all day. Like, are you kidding me? He disturbed my world. I was teaching, and I put some lessons aside to, go down on this trip. Well, I went back up to the producer, and I said, look, can you just interview me and put me in the can for future episode consideration? And the guy said, sure. And they were just putting all the cameras away and stuff. They said, bring up the camera again on camera 3 and 1. We're going to get a quick interview with this Canadian guy, Kelly, here. And then I said to him, you want to see this? And I threw my bag down on the ground, this big pro staff bag, and I stuck a tee in the crevice of the bag. And it was sitting down, the ball was sitting about 2.5 feet off the ground. And I took out my driver, and I was so much adrenaline and so anxious about not being given this tryout that I hit this drive, and I smoked it out of the back of the range. And the range went to about 290, and at the base of the fence was 290. It was about a 320 carry it over, and I flew it over the top of the fence into the trees 40 yards behind. So I flew it about 360, and he just looked at me, and I was excited because I just smoked the pee out of one. I should have been thinking that earlier in the day when on the par fives. Anyway, so what I did, and then I picked my bag up and I said, but I'm the wrong age. And he goes, no, I got the camera guys coming. He says, he called the other producers, hey, come over here quick, got to see this. So I timed it perfectly. I threw the bag down, stuck another tee in, the other two producers were kind of like deer in headlights. They're coming over like, what? And I smashed another one. I turned around and looked at the producer, and his mouth is wide open. He could have caught some garden flies in his mouth, and he was just staring at my ball going into the sunset, just way deep. And he was just like, and he said, wow. And he's looking back at the other producers, and they're like, what? And I picked up my bag. I said, no, I'm the wrong age. He goes, no, hit another one. I said, no, I'm not the right age. I said, my birthday's August 29th, and you got to be 50 by May 1st or something. So then he said, hit one more, and I said, okay. And I threw the bag down. I nailed another one, and the other guys saw it, and they went, hey, this is kind of cool. I said, I'm the wrong age. Well, 2 days later, I'm back in Virginia after the tournament, and I get a phone call. They said, hey, Kelly, you sitting down? And I go, well, no, I'm teaching. I got 4 students here, and I can't really talk at the moment. Who's this? And he said, it was Reagan Johnson with the Golf Channel. Congratulations, you're a semi-finalist. I said, I can't be. I got the wrong age. And he said, no, our lawyers have changed the date to September 1st. I said, well, that's perfect because my birthday's August 29th. They go, she goes, I know. So that's how I got on. They wanted me badly. And anyways, I did a good job. I got into Trump National Los Angeles. Donald Trump was his course, and he was there 13 of the 14 days. I got to be on a first-name basis with him, and I got to introduce him to my boy, and my boy got to get pictures with him in his helicopter, a couple of years later in Washington when he got his new course. We drove around the course, and I was able to call him at direct line at his office. So I had a lot of fun from that. But the next year, they brought me onto the reunion show in Orlando at Reunion Resort, and Cindy Miller was on the show with me, and she was so sweet. And I'm kind of joking around, but I'm a little out there. I'm kind of a ADHD guy, and I have a lot of fun golfing. And I'm abstract, not concrete. Like I see visions and shapes, and I work around cloud formations, and I hit it over trees, and I curve it around buildings, and I just have fun. Like I don't see a straight line. I'm like Bubba Watson. I got to hit a curveball. I've got to send it out there, and I got to tee it up funny, and I grew up hitting off of pencils, and I won the Japan driving championship on a chopstick, and I won the Korean driving championship on a chopstick, and the tee duct taped to the top of it. And I hit the daylights out of golf balls all over the world and won all sorts of money doing it, and I did it my way. And then 7 years ago, they switched the tee height to 4-inch maximum, and it took all my fun away. And just then I was getting to the senior age, and I thought, I'll be like the old John Daly of the seniors tour, I'll get out there and have a lot of fun. But then they took the tee height and made it down to just normal 4 inches only. So, but Cindy, wow. And she's got a pedigree, and she's a heck of a character and so sweet. And I was happy to hear that you guys were working together on the radio for the women's show.
She's been really good, and we took a little bit of break through the holidays, and she had some things at the beginning of this year, so that's why we had a little bit of a late start getting back. But we're going to be having our first show of 2015 next week on next Tuesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time on the Blog Talk Radio's Women of Golf. So you'll have to call in one time, and I'll email you the information.
Yeah, and let her know that Kelly was thinking of her, and I was excited that I was maybe going to get a chance to overlap with her a little bit. And in the meantime, I met a good friend from Canada, from Winnipeg, Terry Hashimoto, half Japanese, half Scottish, or half Ukrainian perhaps. And he's working with this company called Body Track, which has a sensor that you can stand on. It tells you exactly where all your weight distribution is, and it shows you when you're maxing your best swings and you're hitting your best shots, what your body weight transfers are. And then you can learn that. It's like a dance step. And then so if you ever get bonked on the head and forget how to play golf, you can just look at that program again and go, oh, my God. So she's got that information, which is wonderful, high tech. Tiger Woods and his new coach, Chris Comer, are working with the same sort of product, and that's going to improve Tiger's world drastically, and it's going to be perfect. So, and I was going to talk to Cindy a little bit about that Body Track and just how cool that was. And I just got sort of, I guess, I don't know, I didn't even know what to say. I mean, the guy that tested me put me on Facebook. He just put my numbers or whatever you call it when he measured me, and he said, Kelly, it's fantastic what you do to a golf ball. He said, see, most people would never be able to learn to do this, but you learned it by trying to propel an object as hard as you could. There's a girl in Canada called Lisa Longball, and she's the Canadian champ. And Lisa, when she's coming into impact, she's pushing on her left foot upward, like a vertically up, 3 times her body weight. So she weighs 160 pounds. She's, pushing 3 times that weight upward. If I could do math, it would be, 4 480 or whatever. So she's pushing a lot of poundage upward, which is amazing. So
yeah, fantastic.
I'm
going to try and get her on the show.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to try and get her on the show as well. Definitely want to talk with her. But well, Kelly, it's been an enjoyable. It's hard to believe, but the times are.
I want to say one thing. Tell your viewers to look up the most epic of all hole-in-ones. And my sister came to visit me, and she doesn't golf, but she's Irish-Ukrainian like I am. And she's got the ilk that I've got, apparently, because she drove – I've never had a hole-in-one on a par 4, but she hadn't played golf in 10 years, and she drove a par 4 green. It went in the hole for a darn par 4 hole-in-one. And it's on YouTube. It's called The Most Epic of All Hole-in-Ones.
Wow.
And it's unbelievable. And Carol Mann, who's one of the all-time winningest ladies on tour, saw the little thing I put on YouTube, and she said, Kelly, of all the years she's played, it's very rare that a lady gets a hole-in-one on a par 4, and there's only been one on the PGA Tour. It was Andrew McGee that made a hole-in-one on a par 4, and he actually drove it into a group that was putting, and it ricocheted off some guy's putter while he was waiting for his turn, and his putter and ricocheted and went in the hole. So there's only been one.
Wow.
I mean, with John Daly and Rory and all these guys hitting balls, there's only been one in there. Oh, and by the way, you said big break. I want to finish with this before you cut me off the air, because we've been probably going over your budget. I don't want you to have to, get mad at me. But Rory McIlroy, growing up in Ireland, his dad said to me, and remember, I'm half Irish, so I do have a bit of an Irish accent. Listen to my Irish relatives. So I'm caddying at the Honda Classic, and it's in 2004. At the time, Rory was 19, before he won the Dubai Desert Classic as a 19-year-old over in Dubai, in the Middle East. And so the following year, I went over and caddied for Eric in Dubai, and we played a practice round with Rory because we became friends. But how we became friends was this way. I'm caddying for Eric. I'm at the Honda. I'm going down the hallway, and there's a valet, the bell captain. He's walking with a bunch of golf clothes, shirts, whatever, dry cleaning in a bag. He knocks on the door, and I'm like 30 yards down the hallway. Door opens, and I'm going by, and there's this little guy standing there in boxer shorts with his black curly hair. And he's got like red arms, a red neck and face, and a white as get-out body. I mean, I've never seen Casper the Ghost white. And he's just standing there, and he's reaching for the dry cleaning. I walk by and I go, nice boxers, and keep going. So I go down 2 doors, and I open the door, and Eric's in the room relaxing. And I said, Eric, I'm going to go for a workout, and then let's do dinner. He goes, I'm going to get room service. He says, your hotel card, you can get dinner anywhere on the PGA National property for this Honda tournament. Get dinner anywhere, just use your room key. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to go for a swim and a workout, and I'm going to get room service. So off I went. I did my workout. I get into the foyer, and it's so darn busy, there's no seat in the house. And there's this big L-shaped bar, and at the corner there's one seat. So I go up, and there's an old gray-haired chap sitting at the end, and I tap him on the shoulder. I said, excuse me, is the seat taken? He looks at me, he goes, hey, this is that, Kelly. This is Rory said you were here. I have no idea who Rory is. What's he talking about? He goes, Rory was your biggest fan when you were on Big Break. I go, no, I'm thinking, who the heck's Rory? Well, Rory was sitting next to him, but he had his back to us. I didn't realize this was the kid that I saw in the boxer shorts earlier in the day, about 2 hours earlier. So anyways, Rory was talking to one of the old ladies that was a volunteer for the Honda Classic. And this lady was dressed in all the Honda outfit, red, white, and blue outfit, and she's getting his autograph. They're talking. He's paying attention to her, and Dad's talking to me. And, well, Dad's boy, Rory, just won $1 million in the Dubai tournament the week before. So I'm thinking, Rory, and I'm going, wait a minute. I got a glimpse of a TV in a pro shop when I walked by 2 days ago, and there was a young kid with that black hair holding up the trophy with the Sheiks of Araby on each side of him, and I just heard young phenom from Ireland, Northern Ireland or whatever, and I walked through the room, but I just said, oh, and it said 19-year-old. So I said to this fellow who introduced himself as Jerry McElroy, I said, Jerry, so is your boy 19? He goes, yeah. He said, just won $1 million. That's why I'm having a double rum and coke. No, I'll just have a single. So Jerry was living it up. And he goes, he says, Rory's your biggest fan on the Big Break. He talked his mom into allowing him on a school night to come down to the Hollywood Golf Club bar where I was the bartender. She allowed him to come down and stay in the show as it was on late. And he was a schoolboy, But Mom would never let him do anything like this. But he goes, but Ma, Kelly's on tonight. He's got to win. I want him to win. And he pleaded his case to Mom. He was a golfaholic, the kid. And the dad, he worked 2 jobs. He's cleaning the rugby shower stalls, he said, and I'd come home and I'd have a quick bite to eat, and then Rory would tag along with me and come to watch Big Break. And he'd fall asleep after it, in the corner of the bar, and I'd bring him home in the car, and he'd be talking about it at breakfast. But Mom, he says he makes the girls cry, and he hits driver off the deck, and they call him the short game wizard. He's just fantastic. I got to go again. It's on tonight. And his mom said, but you just saw it last night, but they're doing a rerun, Mom. They're doing a rerun. So his dad, he got his way with Mom, and it was very hard because she organized all the golf trips, and all her spare time she spent all the family resources to take him to the little junior tournaments, whether it's Miami, the Doral Publins Junior Tournament, or the San Diego Road Junior or something. At age 9 and 10, he was winning these little tournaments.
Yeah.
But he said, Rory's your biggest fan. So a year goes by, and no. So we're sitting at the bar, and his dad's there, and then now the lady leaves, and Rory's looking down at me. He swings his head, and I look at him. We catch eyes at the same moment. I go, lad, you look better in your pants. And he turned deep red and didn't say a word. He didn't say a word for like 2 minutes. He just like total shock. He just looked at me, and he's so innocent and just like a little 19-year-old kid. And all of a sudden, he became the 14-year-old that was Kelly's fan at that moment. And,
wow.
Ever since then, we've been kind of like Kelly and Rory, where I see him at the Masters last year, and I'm trying to get his attention. And Caroline and him were being interviewed, and he was in the par 3 contest, and he was running down the trail. And I was just telling these people, I said, well, Rory's going to come by. And they said, we're trying to get his autograph. And I said, well, if he sees me, I'll get your autograph. I guarantee it, because Rory would do that for me. So Rory's coming by, and I go, Rory. And he goes, yeah. I said, it's me, Kelly. He goes, I know. I'm late. And he's running. He was all freaked out. And I said, that's Rory for you. He's so nice with the TV people. Now he's supposed to be putting, and then Caroline is up on the green, and she's got the putter out, and he goes, you hit it from about 40 yards away. And she's like, what? And she made a 30-footer downhill for birdie, and everybody went all excited, and she had her red hair, and I thought they were in love, but they're not, apparently.
No.
So.
Fantastic. Well, listen, Kelly, I've got to cut us off there. Unfortunately, I've got Gary Occhino's coming on here, and he's been waiting here in the wings. But Kelly, I want to thank you very much for sharing all of that with the audience tonight, and you're welcome to come back anytime and share some more.
Well, you stay in touch, Ted. Stay in touch, and let's get it together again. And sometime when you got a little more time.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, listen, I could talk golf all night. I appreciate the time, Ted. And regards to Cindy, and tell Gary I'm sorry if we went a minute over.
No problem. All right. Kelly Murray, everybody.
Take care,
Thank you very much. All
Thank
right.
you, sir.
Take care.
Good night.
Good night. Okay, that was Kelly Murray, of course, a golf professional and obviously a great entertainer. And my next guest, of course, been waiting very patiently in the wings, PGA teacher professional. He's the #1 best-selling author, Mind Technique Synergy inventor, and USA Junior Golf Team coach, Mr. Gary Occhino. Just let me tell you a little bit more about him. He coaches the USA Junior Golf Team. As I mentioned, he's the #1 best-selling author and is the leading authority on the Mind Technique Synergy, which is also referred to MTS. His students have used MTS to win hundreds of events at the national, junior, state, collegiate, and club levels. And combined, the MTS combines the newest golf techniques with specialized proprietary mind skills. We're going to get him to talk a little bit more about that when he comes out. But let me bring him out here since he's been very patient and waiting. Gary, welcome to Golf Talk Live.
Ted, hey everybody, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Gary, I apologize. We ran a little bit longer with my first guest, so I apologize for cutting into a little bit of your time. But I've already done the introduction. Gary, let me just start off. We'll get right into some questions here. Thank you for coming back, by the way. Gary's been on the program a few times, and you're going to be stepping up and doing some of the Coach's Corner sessions as well in the upcoming months, and appreciate you for doing that and throwing your hat in the ring once again.
Thank you. I'd like to say that it's going to be tough to follow Kelly. He's quite a storyteller, and I was going to change. I almost wanted to tell you just let him keep going.
No, I know he has some interesting stories, and once you get him going, that I know it's pretty hard to stop. But it's
all good.
But Gary, let's talk something here. We got a couple things I know that you want to get out here tonight, so let's get moving on it. Let's talk about, first off, coaching individuals versus a teaching lesson. Tell us a little bit about the difference and why is one more important than the other.
Well, there's, as you said, there's the coaching side of things, and then there's the teaching side of things. Teaching lessons is a little more of what I want to call the traditional method, where a student comes to you and says, I'd like to fix my swing, or I'd like to work on my chipping. It has a single component to it that tends to be a little more on the technical, around the skills side, whereas, and there's not a lot of talk really about the mindset, about putting it all together, about how to take it to the course. It's just going to be kind of either a one-off lesson or a series of these sort of shallower type lessons that address certain components, but maybe not what I like to call the whole enchilada.
Right.
Coaching addresses exactly that whole enchilada. You're going to talk about with the student. You're really going to be more involved with that student and who they are, what they're about. Really sort of dive in a little more personally without being a psychologist, so to speak, but dive in a little more personally into how that person thinks, how they approach the game, how they react to their shots. Are you resilient or are you not? Are you looking at the situation more big picture or little picture type things? There's lots of different little qualifying factors. How's your confidence? Things like that. And it's really more, I would say, firstly and foremostly about really identifying the person and their style, and then getting into how the technique and the technical and skills aspects work into that style. And usually the coaching type programs have a little bit of a longer term to them, where you have the student emotionally and energetically invested for, say, a few months or 6 months or a year or even beyond, and that allows you to maybe pace things a little better and you kind of know where you stand. So I prefer the coaching method because there tends to be more depth to the learning and far more results, really. It just gets better.
Gary, let me ask you this, and I've heard some people mention this before. Is there a time when maybe it's okay? Is there certain students that maybe the teaching method is maybe a little bit okay to do, and maybe others that may need to be directed more to a coaching setup, or is there a way that you can kind of incorporate both with the student?
I think you're always doing both to some extent, but I find that overall, if we're going to draw more of a line to this, and say coaching, like a T-chart almost, and say a coaching model's over here and a teaching model's over here, I find that probably 80-20 in preference toward the coaching side usually works. There are times when more of what I call the teaching side works, and more of just the one-off lessons, this or that. And typically that actually happens when you have a student with a single need, my putting, my chipping,
right,
things like that, and that student already has really strong intangibles. That student already has the ability to plan out the golf shot, the ability to react. They have a strong athletic background. An example is I teach a gentleman right now who's a football player, and but he's played athletics all his life, and he understands. If you say Michael, next shot, he understands that already, because it's just like next playing football. Forget the last one. So a lot of times they already have certain intangibles they don't have to really coach them up on, and they're meeting you at a different point.
Yeah, and that's true. I think if you've worked with somebody for a while and you've helped them as a coach, and they've really built a solid foundation, there might be times in the future where a lesson might be applicable. But I think if somebody really wants to, especially some of the younger juniors out there that really want to sort of grapple golf, if you will, or tackle golf, I think really you need to get more into a coaching experience with the instructors, because I think it's easy to go out and take 3 or 4 or 5 lessons, but you really don't understand everything. And it's, in my opinion, I think a lot of times, as you said, it's good to help with certain key issues, but to really understand and be able to play your best golf, I think it takes a little more than just a handful of lessons.
Sure, agreed. Very much so.
Now, let me move on to something a little bit different here. Speaking of teaching, obviously technology has been in the forefront for many, many years now. A lot of different products out there to help. TrackMan, obviously, most people I think are familiar with. It's been around for a little while. Let me ask you, in your opinion, just to maybe explain a little bit about how it works, but then also whether you feel it's really helping the average golfer out there. So first, to explain for those that are a little bit illiterate out there that don't understand what the TrackMan, what the purpose of it is, how it works, and then sort of go into how you feel it's helping the golfers.
Yes. Well, TrackMan specifically is a Doppler radar reader. So basically what it does is it reads the ball flight and the club, and it doesn't need a lot of space, so you don't need to be outside to use it. In fact, in one of the indoor studios at which I teach, there's probably 20 to 25 feet of space between the mat and the screen, and that's all it needs, and it reads very accurately. So TrackMan will spit out for you a number of data points, such as everything from swing speed to the angle of attack at which you hit up or down on the ball, the spin of the golf ball, how well you smashed it, toward the center of the club face. It will tell you things about the dynamic loft, which is the loft of the club as it's moving in space or at impact. It measures all that. And really there's, I don't know the exact numbers, but I would estimate there's about 25 different points you could read. Now that, to some listeners, may sound very overwhelming and say, well, what the heck do I need all that for? And the answer is you don't. But what it does, and this phrase has become almost a little cliche, but I believe in it strongly, is why guess when you can measure. TrackMan allows us to measure certain things. So, for example, a typical launch monitor might read the launch angle, which is the angle the ball shoots out at. Well, TrackMan will break down the components to the launch angle and give you the different pieces of it. Or same thing for the path of the golf swing. There's different components that make up the path. TrackMan will give you those pieces, and that's important because what it does is it gives us cues. It's kind of like I would use the analogy of going to get blood work. If you prick somebody's finger and had their blood sitting there on say a piece of paper, it would look like blood. But the blood work tells you exactly what's going on, what the components of the composition of that human are, and it just allows us to measure, and then we don't have to guess, say, in the case of in the natural health community, what supplements we're giving somebody or what prescriptions we're going to write in the medical community. We now know where to start, and the technology will never replace the fact that a coach and a teacher has to be good. You have to know that student. You have to know, how to keep it simple. You have to know how to match it to their mind. And a lot of times, the technology, you don't even show the student. You just use it for your cues and your clues. And then you go and you teach the coach the lesson how you would. But it just takes the guesswork out. I'm a huge fan of it, even for someone who is known for, a lot of times people come up to me and go, hey, you're that mental guy, right? Well, yeah, I could prefer to say a mindset type guy. But I really like it for the skills teaching and the technique and for optimizing drivers and hitting the ball longer and everything. I really love it. And it's been great for my students who are in my year-round programs because there's a time and a place to use it.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think that the technology and it obviously keeps getting better and better as the days go on, and I don't have a problem with it as long as it's used in the right, number one, the right context, but also that it's really for the teacher more so than the students. And I think what's happened is when a lot of this equipment first sort of came on the market, I think a lot of the coaches in the industry in general kind of got excited about it because this was something new. They were able to tell and give certain information. And I think some of them got a little bit too excited about it and started sharing more information than was probably necessary with the students. And I think it sort of created a culture of, well, what's my numbers? And half of the students really don't understand what all the data and information that these it's being fed, and often ends up confusing the process. So I think it's a balancing act. I think you have to, the coach or the teacher certainly needs to have access to that information in this day and age, but I think sometimes too much cannot be is not a good thing either. So I think it has to be a well balanced, and as you said, the instructor or coach has to be well versed as a teacher and an instructor despite the equipment. So in other words, it's a helping tool, but it's not to replace what you should know already.
Most definitely. I did very well without it, and I've done better than very well with it. So it doesn't matter how you use it and when and picking your points. But ultimately, our responsibility firstly is to find out what the student wants. That's key. Yep. But providing that student does want to shoot lower scores and does want to see measurable improvement, the data and the swing stuff really is about, I would say, approximately anywhere from 25 to 50% of it. The rest comes through the other things I mentioned through coaching, and I talk about mind, technique, synergy, which I'm sure we'll cover eventually. But it really is about putting it together and having ways finding ways for that student to get it together. As a team, you're the coach and the student, and doing it in a way that works for that student, and that's the trick. You could have I've had tons and tons of lessons, say 10 years ago, 12 years ago, that person, say a 25 handicap, hit it like a 10 on the range, and you're like, yeah, this guy's got it, or this woman has it, and next thing you know, they go out and they don't look right coming off the course because that information didn't translate. We didn't teach them how to play. We didn't teach them how to adapt to the golf course, all the specialty shots out there, as well as the fact that there's a lot of playing skills that go along with the game. And so information's key, but it's not the key only.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the coaches and instructors out there are starting to realize here in more recent years too that, and that's why you're seeing more and more of them moving out onto the courses now as opposed to just working on the range. I mean, there's certain components that can be handled on the range, but I think you need to have that real playing, because you can teach somebody all you want in a practice facility type scenario. But if they're not able to take what they've learned there out on the golf course, then it really isn't going to matter a whole lot. And I think more coaches and more teachers are starting to realize that now. Let me ask you something, Gary. Since we're on the topic of students and swings and things like that, what are some of the biggest mistakes that the average golfer makes in their swings? What are some of the common things that you see?
Just the actual golf swing as the swing is excuse me just a second. If we just isolate the golf swing for a second, I think that the average golfer definitely hits, like say the driver, for example, too much down and across. You see a lot of that where they're actually hitting down the ball too much and across it, so that produces mostly a slice action. It doesn't guarantee that, but it usually does. I see that a lot. I see people, a big one is not moving laterally enough on the downswing. Folks are taught to kind of like turn a lot of times. Yep. And I see them very frequently from the top thinking all they have to do is turn. Part of that's due to the fact that, you watch like a PGA Tour broadcast, and I see this repeatedly, but the announcers are always talking about how, like I remember seeing Dustin Johnson swing back when he was playing before he had his hiatus here. They were saying, hey, look at how Dustin has two cheeks showing an impact, referring to his buttocks.
Right.
Two cheeks. Look at how well he clears his hips. Look at how well he rotates. Well, there's a strong lateral component, meaning you're moving forward with your lower body far before that hip clearing happens. And so we get a lot of the wrong picture painted, and we don't take that. We take that other part for granted. So I see that a lot where there's not enough lateral motion. I see people trying to take the golf club what they call straight back. A lot of times they think that if they take it back low and slow, that's good, and that really isn't. There should be an arcing component to the takeaway involving some wrist hinge. I mean, that's all a little technical, but, there's things like that. You see a variety of things. And I would say the final piece is I don't think enough people realize or know that the way impact works is it's actually going to be slightly different for a driver than for irons. So people are very perplexed or it's like an enigma to them as to how can I be hitting my irons okay today, but my driver is still slicing, or how do I have my driver in the groove and my irons are hooking? There's slightly different components based on whether you're hitting down and up on the ball, and that creates some frustration because it's kind of like one swing motion, but it's really different swings, based on some setup preferences and other things depending on the person. So you see a lot of different things. But I think the biggest mistake overall, if you look at the player from a performance aspect and not just from just a swing aspect, is really there's actually two tied for number one. The first is people think too much over the golf ball. Literally, when they're hitting, they think too much over it, and it creates all sorts of chaos. And the second thing is they're too quick to jump ship and abandon the what I would call the just the concept of trying to get the ball in the hole. And I guess and the solution to that, which maybe you'll be asking me anyway, the solution to that is we have to learn that golf is about adapting. It's about your adaptive capacity and your ability to adapt to the ever-changing situation. We as humans change all throughout the day, let alone every other day. I'm not sure if you know this, but even your red blood cells change by 20% every day. So that means you're a new person every 5 days. So your feel changes, your eyes change. I mentioned the red blood cells. Your skin changes. Your receptors change. Things change constantly. We have to learn how to adapt, and that's why, I focus a lot on concept learning for students, and then not just so much trying to groove that swing. And it's a very, very different thing. It's hard when when you're not, we're on the phone here, we're on the radio. It's hard when the student's not in front of you, but that's essentially a lot of the things. There's just a lot of misconceptions, I think, and some of them are swing, some of them are holistic, and some of them are in the overall goal.
And that's a great point, and that's going to lead into our next topic here. I think, and this is something that a lot of people have started to talk about. For years, and understandably so. I mean, as every industry does, it evolves, and the golf industry certainly has evolved over the last few decades. But there was a lot of emphasis on the swing part and on getting all of the fundamentals correct and so forth. But now I think a lot of the industry is starting to realize that there is another component to it that's certainly probably more important than really necessarily having a good golf swing, and that's the mental side of things. And I know some people don't like calling it the mental side. Some like to call it the mind and so forth. But I want to read something really quick here, if I can, Gary, and then I want you to talk about it. I mentioned earlier that you're the inventor of mind-technique synergy, and this is the combination of the newest golf techniques with specialized proprietary mind skills. This unique synergy is what makes you a powerful, consistent free golfer who shoots lower scores. You invented the MTS, we'll call it for short, because traditional golf lessons basically don't work, and you're going to explain a little bit more about that. He also says that good people out there deserve the best, so he's redefined golf instruction into a progressive, modern style that has yielded some tremendous results and will for you, of course, the average golfer out there. And let me just read this one more component, Gary, and then I'll let you chime in. In 2013, Gary's students in his last golf lesson ever coaching program dropped a whopping 30.2% off their handicaps. These results make the program America's #1 golf coaching program for amateurs. Gary's last golf lesson ever coaching program is available, and we'll talk about that as well, both in events and private coaching. Let me ask you this. First, explain what is MTS for those of us out here that are unsure, and then explain how important the mind is in becoming a better player.
Mind Technique Synergy, or MTS, is a concept, and so it's not any one thing. It's not something you're just going to pinpoint and say it's this 2 steps or this 7 things.
Right.
It's a concept, and it's the understanding that golf is not all technique, nor is golf all mental. So you can't just sit there and beat balls and till you're grooving something, but you also can't just sit on a couch or a chair and visualize it while eating potato chips and say, you become a better player just sitting there. So it's understanding that it's how you put them together that really matters. So specifically, I'll give you an example. I teach all students, and this is customizable, but there's a process that we do before the shot to prepare the mind. There's then also a process away from the ball to prepare your technique, swing thought, and then you just hit the ball without thinking, and then staying positive afterwards. We customize that process. I know it sounds so easy, but it's prepare the mind, prepare the body, hit the ball, and stay positive. That's an example. Within those 4 steps, there is a lot going on where we're putting the mind and technique together. And so then what we do is we take an individual and we figure out where are they either not focused, over-focused, or inefficient, and then we start to teach them how to play. So that process works for every shot. That was one example. That's one example. Another example I use a questionnaire that's been developed by a company called Secrets of Champions. There's a fabulous man out there named Dr. George Carlo, who is one of my mentors. Dr. Carlo works currently with one of the Major League Baseball teams, as well as PGA Tour. He worked with the Ryder Cup team in 2008 that won. You hear about the pod system that Paul Azinger implemented.
Yep.
Dr. Carlo was the consultant to that team, and he helped teach and coach Paul Azinger a little bit. So the long and short of it is the same assessment that was used in this Ryder Cup team I use with students, and it gives us all sorts of information about how that student thinks, processes information, reacts to situations. It's a little bit it's great. It takes 2-3 months off the learning curve because I don't have to experiment. I know all about that person's mind. So I take those characteristics, and then I know, for example, how to teach that person. I know some people like to do one shot at a time. Some people like to play one hole at a time. Some people are going to be more focused on one thing at a time. Some people are big picture. So then we analyze. We know whether the left brain's more active, the right brain's more active. Are they a feel or a visual type person? There's 5 or 6 different categories, and then we realize where their performance lacks. So then we realize whether they need more with skills, whether they need more with performance, whether they need more with mindset. So all the tools I use, there's 4 or 5 of them really, are designed, again, to get at what makes you special, how do you learn, how are you going to perform, where are you inefficient in your performance, where are you inefficient in your energy, and all these things that really have nothing to do with where your left arm is positioned at the top. We do that too. I spend half my time doing that too, but then we take the performance or the evaluation in this intangible situation, and we marry them with the technique and the skills coaching. So all the time we're doing mind-technique synergy. So it's a little bit abstract. It's kind of hard when you're not in front of me or when you're not in a seminar,
right,
event, but I do the best I can to explain it. Again, it's not some one thing. It's 4 or 5 different things that are all either invented by me or utilized by other performance coaches.
Do you think, Gary, that one of the things that, pardon me, that has really benefited the golf industry here lately with focusing more on sort of the mental side of things? A lot of people, as you mentioned, some people are visual, some are not, and there's a lot of different ways. I think traditionally what has sort of been for the golf industry is sort of a one-size-fits-all, and we're starting to realize that because everybody learns differently and everybody reacts differently to certain stressful situations, that really we can't lump everybody into the same basket. So we have to sort of, treat them as individuals. And even though we do theoretically, certainly one of the things that has created, I'm not sure, Gary, are you still with me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I heard a pop in the background. I wasn't sure maybe if we lost the transmission here. But what I was saying was that, basically I think traditionally the golf industry sort of lumped everybody into, one area, if you will. And I think it's starting to come to fruition now that people are starting to realize that because people learn in different methods and different patterns, that we have to focus more on that side. So this is something that I'm gathering that MTS is helping you to do, is to be able to sort of differentiate different folks' needs?
Most definitely. That is exactly what it does. It allows us to take, there's certain things that I think all folks have to do for a golf shot or for to play well, but what I'm able to do via my assessment tools, via my style, via this mind technique synergy style, is customize it all. Figure out what you need, what you don't. Some people, Kelly said something very interesting in the last segment. He said that he's the type that has to look up into the clouds and shape his shots, basically, like a Bubba Watson. Well, to me, what that tells me is he's a highly kinesthetic or field type person, and he's also very highly right brain. The right brain, for those folks who don't know, is your creative side. It's your pictures and images side. It's creative. So you would be incredibly disastrous if I started to give Kelly either numbers that didn't work for him, or it's one thing to give him a number that explains how to bend it around that cloud. Bubba Watson uses some TrackMan too, but I can't overload the left side of his brain at any point in time, and I can't give him. He has to think in pictures, if that makes sense. He told us that basically,
right.
But that's where the evaluations, the assessments come in, and then I could have the very next student who might be an accountant or an engineer, and who is much more of a linear type thinker, much more left brain. That person's going to need to do something to shut that left brain off over the ball. So we're going to do, for example, we're going to do more eyes closed practice, not like hitting with the ball with your eyes closed, but lots of movement drills to stimulate that. Even having the person listen to something like classical music will help them develop the right side of their brain more. Whereas someone like Kelly does not need that. He actually might need some more things to keep him focused. You could see he had trouble getting off the phone, or however he was connecting, which is fine. I mean, that's great. I enjoyed listening to him thoroughly. I actually would like to call him and talk to him. But that means, he's probably going to struggle with focus, or when it comes, crunch time, he's going to struggle, or if it's slow play, it's going to be tough for him. So we have to know these people's tendencies, know how to qualify them and what works for them, and then how to distribute the information, and that's really what I'm all about. And then also, like I said, there's a skills component. So that's really what we're doing here, is where it's really more of a performance coaching thing than it is just, spewing out the cookie cutter information. It's cool to know, but some people it just doesn't work.
So would this then, help to explain the differences in some of the, if you look back in history, some of the professionals on the tour, like a Nicklaus, as it comes to mind, obviously, very, very focused in his game. He would obviously be somebody, unlike Kelly, that needs to be focused, that is able to stay focused on the task at hand. So he would be somebody that probably wouldn't learn from a visual key. It would be more linear. Would that be correct? Would that be an accurate assessment?
You're on the right track. It doesn't make it definite, but you're on the right track. For hearing this for the first time, yes. So it's a good start.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, and see, and I think this is what a lot of the players are starting to realize as well, and this is why so many of them, I think part of the problem with a lot of the guys out on tour for many, many years now is, a constant sort of revamping of the swing. And a lot of times that may not have necessarily been what they needed to work on. And we all know that you look at the guys and the gals that are out on tour are phenomenal ball strikers, pardon me, and, can hit some incredible shots. But a lot of them under stressful situations might fall prey to or victim to overthinking, if we were to put it in that format. So given that sort of question, what are some effective methods that we can give some of the students that might be listening in tonight to help reduce that overthinking? What are some things that, some tools, if you will? I know you can be limited in what you can say, but maybe you can give us a few ideas of what a student can do to help prevent from overthinking.
Sure. Well, the first one is to really, I think people that do think a lot are going to, and we can't, tell them not to. But it's where you do your thinking that's the most important. So I talked a little bit about having sort of like a 4-step procedure where you get behind the ball and you basically, I have you start with an I will statement. I will hit my ball at the hole. I'll hit my shot and my ball in the left center of the fairway. Or I will start it at the pin and curve it a little to the right center, something like that. So you have a very committed statement to yourself. That narrows and focuses the mind. Then the second thing is, if you're going to do any swing practicing, rehearsals, anything about any swing thoughts, it has to happen away from the ball. Whether you choose to do it behind the ball, meaning looking down the target line, or you choose to do it left of the ball, we figure that out based on your preferences. But any technical, I draw a line in the sand, similar to what Vision 54 does. I think they call it like a think box and a play box. I'm not really sure. But I draw a line in the grass or in the sand, so to speak, where you're away from the ball, and this is where you rehearse all technique. You are not allowed to go into that playing zone where you're going to hit the ball and be thinking. So you can do everything you want. You can write a dissertation if you want away from the ball, but you're going to get all your swing thoughts rehearsed and done there. Then you have 4 seconds to hit your shot. 4 seconds is the amount of time that it allows you to keep your mind-body connection. So the reason why we do that rehearsal is away from the ball is so that thinker can think. The thinker can, do whatever he or she wants to get it out. It's almost like scratching the itch. But then if you do it right, within 4 seconds you hit the ball, you keep that neuro connection, that mind-body connection. There's no real such thing as muscle memory. It's a neural connection or a mind-body connection. You keep it. So let's just say a person is trying to rehearse keeping the club inside. They're like kind of the classic outside in, swinging down and across person. And I have that person trying to hit the club off the right leg, just as a thought, or keep it by your body as you're coming through, or something like that. That person's going to practice that in the thinking zone, right next to the ball or right behind the ball, and then they're going to walk right in and smack it. That allows them to trust. I call it's like ragu. If you remember the old ragu commercials, the Italian grandmother would say, "It's in there, it's in there." Well, I call it like ragu. You practice it, and you keep it in there for that 4 seconds. It's the time you have before you lose your mind-body connection on average. Again, there's ways to test for that. Some folks are 5.5, some folks are 3.5. But 4 seconds is about right. Then you just go and bang the ball, and you're going to preserve what you just practiced. So I try to really, really get people to understand that you can think. It's just where you think. And then once your shot is done, you have to say next shot. You're not allowed to dwell on it. You're in a playing zone. You're in a playing mode. Next shot.
Yeah. And a good example really of what you've just talked about is Tiger Woods. If you look at Tiger Woods, and I'm not talking about in today's fashion, but when you look when he was at the height of his, and I know it's a terrible thing to say, height of his career, he's still got years left, but when he was playing at his best so far, he would always do that. When you would see him, in preparation for certain shots, he would take a step back and even off the line of flight, if you will, and he would practice. And you would see him trying to get his hands or his body into a certain position, and then he would step up to the ball and execute the shot. And he would sit and do that several times. That was part of it, almost incorporated into his routine. If he needed a specific shot, and he would do that, and you would see him do different, preparations depending on the type of shot he needed. And that's something that you don't you see more of now on tour, but you didn't see that a lot. You would see certainly practice swings or a pre-shot routine, but you didn't see a lot of what you were just talking about with a lot of players. Tiger was one of the first ones I remember seeing that with.
Exactly, I agree with that, and that's always the case. And now I see this. I see on tour a lot, and this is why I'm very careful to differentiate. Sometimes people who like to be a little critical of me, or I have some pretty bold claims there, talking about a number one program in America based on results, and number one bestseller. I mean, these are things
right.
that I'm stepping out and saying, this is, it's bold. But so some people get critical of me and they say, well, why aren't you teaching tour pros? Well, the answer is I coach amateurs, and I've answered the amateurs' problems, which aren't the tour pros' problems. The tour pro has thousands of hours of practice and mastery and more ability than the amateur. And so, like, for example, I'll talk about this thinking zone and playing zone, and you'll see a lot of times on tour, the tour pro, whether it be McIlroy or Woods or Mickelson or any of these great players, you'll see a lot of times they actually don't do rehearsals. And some people go, why isn't he rehearsing? Well, when you do something 100,000 times and then another 100,000 times, like your stock swing, there's usually not a lot of rehearsal. It's just so ingrained. They don't lose that mind-body connection. It's kind of like become like walking. It's like that Daniel Coyle principle with all the hours put in the talent code. But you do see them rehearse anytime they're doing something that's off the norm. When they're trying to draw and fade the ball a little more excessively, when they're playing a flop shot, when they're trying to, work on their trajectory a little bit differently than might be the normal shot. You see rehearsals all the time, and that's what I can only sort of rebut with. But for the amateur who's going to work during the day or, I don't know, stay-at-home moms or stay-at-home dads or anybody who doesn't have all that much time to golf. I'm not talking about, retired golfer 5 days a week, 70 years old, who's been playing for 50 years, that can just get up there and bat it. They need to have the comfort and to regain that mind-body connection. So that's why the rehearsal is so paramount. And, yes, Woods was doing that more back in the day. I see him doing it more in his specialty shots now. And I haven't watched enough recently to be able to comment. But that just kind of answers your question directly and also maybe expands on it, on where the average amateur, I think, really needs to understand he or she is not what you see on TV, and there's a whole different set of rules. And that's why I've had so much success, because I'm not trying to even teach the tour pros. I mean, if one came to me, I might do it, but I'm just not. I'm more concerned with, answering the average problems, and my program's adept at that better.
Well, and I agree with that 100%. And the thing is, and it's certainly not to knock anybody out that is working with some pros and that, but, really there's not a lot you can do. Once somebody gets to the pro level, I mean, they're at a point in their game that the difference as far as how many strokes they're going to save is really negligible compared to a 25 handicapper. You can take a 25 handicapper, work with them in a good coaching program, and maybe over a period of time, and with some good hard work and some practice in there, they can get down to maybe even become a scratch player or maybe even just a 4 or 5 handicap. Whereas a tour pro really, once they've gotten to that level, you're not going to drop his round by 5 to 10 strokes. He's already pretty much at the peak. What you can do, obviously, at that level is help him to put what he's learned all over these years together and work with his mind and get him to be able to be consistent throughout his 4 rounds in order to be able to be more highly competitive. But if you look at most of the players like a Luke Donald, I've mentioned several times on the program, who's a phenomenal ball striker, but he's not winning week in, week out. Why is that? Well, it's not because of his ball striking ability. It's something else, and that's really what some of the top instructors and some of the mind coaches out there are really trying to work with these top tour players. They're not there to shave an extra stroke or two off their game. They're looking there to be able to take what they've learned, put it together, and be consistent for those 4 rounds and be competitive. And that's really what they're trying to do.
Yes, that's most definitely true. And it's very different. You're right. You're not going to get that 30% improvement. You're going to get more like maybe a shot or a half a shot, or get that consistency or more cuts or maybe a win here and there. And, in a lot of cases with the tour professional, what I've observed, and I have plenty of friends who do teach tour pros and colleagues, is a lot of times it's educating them to understand their miss and educating them to understand how to right the ship when they are struggling. And again, I mentioned this earlier, I used this term adaptive capacity, but increasing their adaptability is really key. Getting them to play different shots, different courses, different understanding of energy management when you're in the hunt, when you're struggling, so it does. I guess the same rules apply, but how you go about it slightly differently because of the fact that they do have more time, and they also the micro fractures of difference. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's amazing what's out there now, and I didn't make it, as I mentioned to Kelly earlier on the year. I didn't make it down to the PGA show this year to see what I don't really go down to look at the equipment as much as I do to see what else is going on there. And there's just so much available, and so much, not just technology, but just so many different approaches to the game, and some things that I think are very good, and others are very similar to what I've seen before. But the industry is definitely changing. Gary, I want to give you an opportunity, obviously, as time's winding out here, and you can thank Kelly for shortening your time a little bit, but you're coming back on here anytime you want. But I want you to let everybody know about your program, America's #1 golf coaching program for amateurs, and let them know how they can participate if they're interested in doing that. I know it's available for events and also for private coaching, and I know that you indicate here that some of the space in the private program is very limited, so you have some sort of have to be sort of pre-qualified, if you will, to get into this elite program. So tell them about how they can learn more about it, where they can get a hold of you, and how they can become better players.
Sure. I have multiple websites, so I'll just give everybody one or two.
Sure.
My main website is GaryOchinoGolf.com. That's GaryOchinoGolf.com. GaryOchinoGolf.com, and most of the information's there. I have what I would call higher level executive programs for people who would like to travel and come see me, or I travel to them. That have that, but I also have at a little bit of a lower price point and a little bit more of a more common model. I have events around the country, so I'll teach anywhere between 8 and 15 events this year, usually in resort locations. Like we just did one at PGA National a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Had 4 folks there. It went outstandingly well. And we use the same assessment. We use that assessment I was talking about, and then we use other tools. And we usually spend 3 days. This one was actually 3.5. And we'll go through golf swing. We'll go through all the components you need to play better golf and shoot lower scores. So those usually around the country. I have home base out of Buffalo, New York, which is very interesting because most of the high-level coaches, are in the Palm Beach area or Arizona.
Yeah.
I'm in Buffalo, but I have 2 indoor studios. One's more for playing lessons and performance, and the other one's more with the TrackMan for the swing. And then I have a country club where I teach called the Orchard Park Country Club, which is very nice. So people are welcome to come fly in and see me. We can host them for a day, a half day, multiple days. And then, if they do qualify to get into the coaching program, it's basically by application. And what I do very simply is I have to know that you're going to be a positive thinker, you're going to be resilient, you're going to be okay with change, you're going to, make your appointments, do things. It's just more like that. Everybody gets at least the chance to start off and prove themselves at sort of a qualifying standard. And that's really about it. I also have swing information out there. Oh, and one more thing for folks who truly don't want to or can't afford the programs or just don't want to travel or have other limiting factors. I'm going to be launching in as soon as 2 weeks, as long as 4 weeks, an online version of the program. It's going to be very, very well priced, very, very detailed information. It's going to be all video based, and it's going to be customizable in only the way we can do it. So I will have an online version people can get excited about. You can email me if you have questions, or just be on the lookout.
Well, fantastic. As I said, Gary, everything is changing in the industry, and it's and a lot of it is certainly for the good. I think that the industry is starting to realize that there is a whole different area, especially for the amateur golfers. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we've talked about tonight has been available or is available at the tour level, but it's really not been as available to the masses, if you will. And it's slowly, the industry, as I said, with the changes it's making, is starting to recognize, because handicaps really for a long time haven't changed. They've sort of been stagnant for most of the amateur golfers out there. And I think the industry really had to start taking a look and saying, what can we do differently to help some of these golfers enjoy? And number one is we want golfers to have fun. And if they're struggling and not seeing improvement, then they're more apt to to drop out and do something else. So anything that we can do that's going to help make it a more enjoyable experience for the players out there, I'm all for that. And if it's a combination of technology and a combination of some theory and whatnot, then let's see what we can do to help them out there. And it sounds like you've got a great program going here, and I'm certainly glad to throw any support I can in it with the program. So you always have an open door policy here on Golf Talk Live. I appreciate it. And for those tuning into the program, you can get in touch with Gary through his website as well at www.GaryOcchino.golf, and that's GaryOcchino golf.com. Gary, any closing thoughts before we go off the air?
No, I'd just like to encourage people to have fun, stay patient with their games, be positive, understand that I heard a quote from Sean Foley once. He said something along the lines of, if you miss the sweet spot of the club face by a couple of millimeters, that your ball flies about 15 yards offline. That's at a high speed. But, the game's tough, and just enjoy it. Keep, remember why you play it. Invite other people to play it and grow it that way. And you're better than you think you are. It's in there somewhere. It's just start finding it. So, and if you are looking for a coach that's not me, interview people. There are many great coaches out there. There's people who are technicians, people who are more holistic, people who focus on the short game. Interview them. Find out what works for you, and ask 3 or 5 of them questions. And if anyone doesn't want to, like what I would call be bothered with your time, then they're not for you. So, best of luck to everybody, and I hope I was able to help you some today. And feel free to ask me if you have other questions.
Yeah, Gary, I always appreciate you coming on the program. You've got some great insight, and I know the audience appreciates it as well. And I know you're going to be coming back here in, I think, just a little over a month's time. You're going to be coming back on for Coach's Corner, and always appreciate your input there as well. And I know I had some great feedback last year, and that's why I decided to run the program again this year. And seats, as they say, have been filling up fast for the Coach's Corner. Still a few spots left, but Gary, I always appreciate your thoughts and input into that program as well. And always makes it a lot of fun and interesting to get some different perspectives. And as you just pointed out, there are a lot of great teacher professionals out there, both male and female. Don't want to forget the ladies out there, of course. And it makes sense for you, the golfer out there, to go out and almost treat it like an interview. It's not just about how they can help you, but it's what you can get from them and what you can, you need somebody that you can communicate well with, and you need somebody that understands what your needs are. And sometimes those communications don't always go as smooth as they should. And so that's why it's important, as Gary said, to go out there and do your own kind of interview and talk to 3 or 4, even 5 of them and see if which one's right for you. And don't listen to your buddies out there in your foursome. Get some good professional help. You'll find you'll play much better golf. Gary, as always, thank you very much for coming on the program. Again, always an open invitation. Welcome to come back anytime. And I appreciate you sharing your thoughts and input with the audience tonight.
Thank you, Ted, and thank you to the audience who's listening. And may you all have a very nice evening. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Gary.
Take care.
All right. Okay. We're just getting here in the last moment or two of the program. I always enjoy, as I said many times, having Gary on the program. I want to thank my special guest tonight, Kelly Murray, great professional golfer, teacher, and of course, as we saw tonight, or heard tonight, a great entertainer, shared some great stories, of course, and did a few impressions of Mo Norman and one of Payne Stewart. If you didn't get a chance to hear that and you've tuned in towards the end of the program, you need to go back into the on-demand section, and I'll give you the details here in just a second, but you need to listen to it. I had a lot of great stories. I didn't get a chance to get all my questions in, unfortunately, but I'll get Kelly back here on a program and share a few more with us. But very entertaining, very interesting, and certainly very knowledgeable. And as he talked about here, hit Guinness Book World Record longest drive, 684.8 yards with a wooden driver, no less, back in 1990. He set a Guinness Book of World Record launch with that golf ball. So just amazing. Was on the big break for both one of the regular programs and then also for the reunion show, which he was on with, of course, my co-host on the Women of Golf show, Legends Tour player and LPGA professional Cindy Miller. And unfortunately, Cindy had other things to do, or otherwise we would have got her to call in tonight and talk to him. But we'll connect somehow and let him talked to her with on one of the shows. But I want to thank Kelly again, and I also want to thank Gary Occhino for coming on, a great PGA teacher professional and the #1 best-selling author and the inventor of Mind Technique Synergy, and also a coach for the USA Junior Golf Team. You can get a hold of Gary, as I said, on his website at www.garyochinogolf.com, and you can learn all about his America's #1 golf coaching program for amateurs. Make sure you check that out, and send him an email as well if you have any questions or concerns. But I want to take this opportunity to thank all of the listeners worldwide for faithfully tuning into Golf Talk Live each week. Certainly have a pleasure and enjoyment of having a number of highly talented coaches, teaching professionals, authors, and entrepreneurs that have stopped by the program and shared their thoughts and input with my audience, and it's through their participation and guest appearances that have helped make Golf Talk Live a first-class show. If you want to listen to the show in its entirety, if you weren't able to tune in tonight live, you can go to www.blogtalkradio.com, type in /Golf Talk Live, or you can go up in the search key. Don't forget, anytime during the live broadcast, if you ever want to call into the program, you can do so at area code 646-716-4667, or you can email questions or comments to ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. And if you're interested in coming on the program, if you're in the golf profession, you want to come on and share some of your thoughts and inputs in the golfing world, you're welcome to do so. You can email me there as well at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, facebook.com/Golf Talk Live blog. That's the home page on Facebook. Make sure that you throw a few likes there while you're there and pass that around and get some others to do it as well. And you can also follow me on Twitter at Ted and Buck CEO, CEO being in capital letters. Thanks again, everybody, for joining in. I just want a few quick special thank yous to some great supporters of the program, Mr. Jonathan Laird, owner and editor of South Coast Golf Guide. You can learn more about the guide at southcoastgolfguide.com, a great publication here in the southeastern part of the United States. Jonathan's a big supporter of the program, and thank you, Jonathan, for all of your continued support. And make sure you go and visit him on Facebook as well at South Coast Golf Guide on Facebook, and throw a few likes while you're there. Mrs. Meredith Kirk, who was the 2014 Mrs. South Carolina, and she is a big supporter. She can be on the program, I believe, the end of February. Nikki and Tiffany Litherland, thank you for all your continued support. Mr. Bernie Pinder from Ontic Golf, and Mr. Peter Doyle from Doyle Golf Solutions over in Ireland. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for sticking with me and being here each and every week with me on the program. I'll see you guys back here next Thursday evening at 6 p.m. Central, right here on Golf Talk Live. Have a great evening and great weekend, everybody. God bless.